Hello, hello, and welcome to the 14th episode of The Missing Piece. And I am super, super duper excited to have you on, Kalpana.
Hi,
Welcome.
Reshma.
It's so nice to have you on. I mean, I've been seeing you for a couple of years ever since I got into Access, and it's very interesting to see how you create with all around the world, to say the least. Like you're in you're in another country every other day, and it's super exciting to see you create. And it's very interesting. Like I always wonder, like, what are you doing that nobody else is doing? Like, what are you doing that you know? So let's have a
Nice
conversation.
question.
So that's you always keep me on my toes. Like, okay, she's creating this now, and she's creating this now. So
Oh, wow.
it's
I love that. I love to hear that.
yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, firstly, welcome. And so, everybody who doesn't know me, I'm Reshma George. I'm from India and I'm a CF. And this is Kalpana. And Kalpana is from Europe. Which part of Europe are you from, Kalpana?
I was born and brought up in the Netherlands, and I live in Belgium.
Oh, that's amazing. Cool. Awesome. Somebody said the fracking lady is here.
Ha! Yes, by now I have been doing more than 80 days of fracking nonstop. So I have kind of gotten this title by now, it looks like.
Oh, that is so cool. So, I have been seeing you too. I mean, I catch you on and off,
Yeah.
when I can, and it's brilliant. So, what actually inspired you to do the fracking in the first place? Like, is there any particular reason?
Yes, it's totally selfish. It's because Gary Douglas had told us, like, frack every day, frack the insanity that allows COVID-19 to exist. And I was like, oh, yeah, I have to do it. And I'd forget it every day. And then I'd remember it and I'd tell my team, and we were like, yeah, we have to remind each other. But we just kept forgetting. And then one day I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna I'm gonna do it live every day, and that kind of gets me present to frack. And then whoever wants to frack and who also forgets can join me. And I thought I was gonna do it for like 10 days, and then it became 20 days, and yesterday was day 85. So that's basically, contributing to change with all that's going on in the world, really. Yeah.
That is brilliant. So, is that how you are with everything in life? Like, if you commit, you're at it. Like, you're like,
Yeah. I mean, that's well said. That's pretty much how I go. I'm all in.
so were you always like that, or what was it like? I know you've been in Access for about close to 7 years, or a little over 7.5 years, and like, was it always like that? Did you always have ease with creation? Were you all in all the time, or did you have these issues of, procrastination and not committing, and all
I
of
would
that?
say that I've always kind of been that. I think a lot of humanoids recognize that you like one thing and then you're really into it and then you're over it and then you do another really cool thing. So you do a lot of different things. Like I learned flute and then I made my parents buy this really expensive flute. And then my dad was like, I still remember, it's like, this one you gotta like do longer because it's, if I'm gonna buy it for you. And I was like, no, I love it so much. And then after like 1.5 years, I was like so over it. And my dad was like, oh yeah, you know? So, and I have always been that kind of feisty about creation. My mother was a dancer, and she had one of the first people who had an Indian dance school in the Netherlands. So I was in this energy of creation somehow. She would make performances for her school, and with her students for events. I was part of that energy, so it's been very much in my life. So I in that way, procrastination happens very rarely, like doing your tax or doing your laundry, stuff like that. But not like the stuff that, it's not a very usual thing for me to choose.
Right. So I have an interesting question for you. Like, I think it's interesting because when you're in a relationship, you can't be like, okay, I'm going to indulge with this person completely and then I get just over it. And, like, especially if you're choosing to get married or, all of those things. So what do you suggest? Like, how does that work? Like,
I think in that part, the indulging is more about allowing yourself and each other to indulge in what is fun for them and for you. So a lot of times it's like, let's say your boyfriend likes football, then you also have to start to like football, and then you have to go watch football together and
Yeah.
let go of what you might have liked. And in this indulging, it's like, well, you go for what you like, and I will go for what I like. Each other's indulgence that works. And in that, some people might have common indulgers, right? Moment like things that they
Yeah.
both enjoy, but it's not a
Yeah.
forced thing. That's what works for me and my husband. We've been together now for over 11 years. We were married for 11 years. We're together for 13. We travel a lot. My husband just got back after 3 weeks traveling in Africa. We give each other the space, and in that
Yeah.
space, do what you like, kind of, right? Like
And
give the space to each other.
he's not somebody who does access, is he?
Well, I don't know what that means. If you look,
Eh?
a lot of access I understood. I got to know about access when I was already with him, and I
Right.
started to understand him better when I learned like no form, no structures, no significance. I'm like, that's what he does. That's where he
Yes,
functions
right.
from. So a lot of it is actually where he functions from.
Right. Cool. Awesome. So, I have a very interesting point of view when I'm looking at, dating somebody or being with somebody. And yeah, I don't know if you know, but I'm a South Indian and I come from a Malayalam, a Malayali background, and I'm a Christian too. So, I've seen, you know, South Indian Christians are really rigid about a lot of things. Like I've really seen my family be very firm about a lot of things, and not so much my parents, but my extended family. Like this is how it needs to be. This is how it cannot be, and all of that.
Yeah.
So I do have a very interesting point. Like it will be easier to have somebody who has the tools of access, and but at times it can be limiting because then the number of men in in access are very less. Like that's barely 10% of the whole crowd in
Yeah.
access.
Yeah.
So, what is your story, Kalpana? Like, what has it been like for you, like, with respect to a relationship? Like, I know you're born and brought up in Netherlands, so you never. I don't know if you really had the rigid form and structure that we have in India, and
Well, a lot of diasporic parents are more classical and conservative than parents in the country of the motherland. So that's something that people tend to forget. Like in my case, not so much, but a lot of diasporic parents are much more into holding on to the culture by being stricter than,
yeah,
back home.
yeah,
Um,
so,
but in my case, I will just want to say one thing. I found Access when I was with my husband, and then I was sharing it with he's not really into any stuff. He just functions from very much from energy and space. A very energetic person, very aware, and for him, it's not something that you need to talk about. So I was always interested in that. And when I found Access, I was like, oh my God, this is cool. And he got really interested too because it spoke to him, the pragmatics, the efficiency. And we did our first bars class together. We did our first foundation together. We did our first 2 and 3 together. And then he was like, you should go for this. This is so natural to you. And I kind of flew off. In the beginning, I had this very conclusionary reality that he should come to the classes I come because that's what we need to do as a couple,
yeah,
which was
yeah,
not being in allowance nor being present with what's required. When I
yeah.
let go of that kind of obsession, it created a lot of ease and it allowed him to receive more of the change that I was choosing.
Right. Right. So you never had the point of view that this person has to be. I mean, of course, you said you did, but not in the broader perspective, right? Like when you have to be with with this aspect, you said that you were functioning from conclusion, but when you let go, it was a lot of ease. However, when you look at the whole set of relationships as such, we have a lot of conclusions. The person needs to be a particular height, the person needs to be a particular weight, the person needs to be a particular religion, the person needs to be a particular
Absolutely.
caste, he or she needs to be from a particular country, nationality. I mean, there's just so much. Like how like the spectrum is so broad, but we narrow it and narrow it and narrow it and narrow it, and the people who we can actually be with is are very few. So, and it's so ingrained. It's like we've been told from a very long time. It's ingrained, like to such an extent that at least there are people who even check horoscopes, right?
Hmm.
So, like, how does one get over all of this? Like, what tools can they use to sort of,
Well, I mean, in my case, I am from a South Indian family. I'm Tamil. And so I know all the things you're talking about. And I married a West African man. So I chose something completely different that nobody had chosen in any of the generations in my families, right? I also married an artist. Now, I always used to say, because I'm an artist, I'm a dancer, choreographer, and I'd be like, oh no, I never want to have a relationship with another artist. Like, it's too dramatic. And I ended up
Yeah,
marrying one. So
yeah,
but it wasn't from I must marry an artist because he will get me and nobody else will get me, which is often with access. I want an access person because only an access person is interested in consciousness. Great
yeah,
conclusion. Only an access person will get who I am. Great conclusion. But actually being in the question of who can contribute to me and who can I contribute to and who can I be with, that one and one is not two, but like 2000. And
yeah,
then exactly what you're saying, like the all the conditions, the list that we have of the background and the job and the height and the color of the eyes and the everything doesn't matter
yeah,
anymore because that's just total mental stuff. And so that is actually what allowed me to fall in love with my husband, because I was seeing him for who he was and not for, oh my God, he's West African, or oh my God, he's an artist, but like, oh my God, this guy's amazing. And I want to get to know more about him. And he inspires me. And you know, he turns me on in all kind of ways. And similar to him, they ask him a lot, like, how did you find an Indian girl? Like, what? The combination is strange, but it's like same for him. It was like, yeah, it's not about all those this reality things. So how to get out of it is actually asking, like, hey, what do I desire? If I didn't have any one of the questions you could ask is, what do I desire? Who do I desire? That is beyond any reference point, and that is beyond anything that I've decided I must have to create happiness.
right, right. Who do I desire? Wow, that's an interesting question. So, like, what, when you're asking that question, what are you looking for?
Well, actually, you're just literally opening yourself up to possibilities. You're not looking for, like, it's not the
Something.
hunt with the horoscope or the hunt on the, but it's like the, hey, who, what? Because when you get into the who do I desire that can contribute to me, it's an energy. It's again not that list that we've learned to look for.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah.
oh no, he's awesome, but he doesn't match this part of the list, the first three things. So he has to be checked out, which is a very different
Right.
energy. So it's really the energy of, what do I desire to create in my life? Do I even desire to create that with somebody else? And that can change, you know, that can
Yeah,
change. That
yeah.
for me, for a very long time, I was absolutely not interested in a relationship. And I say this a lot of times. Anytime people said they were getting married, I'd be like, condolences. And literally, I'd be like, why would you do that to yourself? And that changed when I met. And then there was a moment where I was like, actually, that might be fun to play with somebody and like actually create something greater that I could not create alone. That's when I met Serge. So it's not for everybody, and it can change. It doesn't have to be anything, but it's like allowing yourself to be present with what's true for you. And
Yeah.
so you have to get vulnerable with what you've learned is true for you. Like, oh, you must, like in my case, I must marry a South Indian and a Brahmin and an Iyer, and I must marry somebody who has a good income, and I must marry somebody blah 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 blah. And all those things a lot of times we don't want to look at because it kind of shakes the foundation of your world around relationships. You're like, no, 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 it's fine. South Indians are great, man. We can have dosa together. Like you make the story of why it's acceptable, but then
Yeah.
actually getting vulnerable with yourself does not mean, oh, actually, I got an awareness. I want to meet a West African. No, because then I'm going to another. It's like literally like I'm letting go of all that stuff that I've decided that keeps me from engaging with others.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then I can receive more.
That's so brilliantly put. Like all these conclusions actually keep us from engaging with people, right? Because
Yeah,
he's not or she's not a particular whatever that we've decided that we cannot
exactly.
have. And being vulnerable, wow, that's such a brilliant conversation, Kalpana, that you said being vulnerable with oneself. Forget everybody else right now. Just being
Exactly.
vulnerable
It
with
starts with
yourself.
you.
Yeah, yeah. And it's like being vulnerable with yourself and saying, hey, what do I truly desire? Because, lately I've been looking at this whole thing about family. Okay.
Mm,
So I've lived with my family all my life. Like, I'm 30 and I've lived with only my family up until now. And at times, it's so interesting to see how you don't see a life beyond them.
yeah, yeah.
You're defined by, okay, what does mom want, or what does dad require, what does your dog require, but you're not so much a part of that equation. And it's alarming at times. It's a little scary for me because, not knowing what I truly not including me in the equation. And like, it takes a lot of courage to be that vulnerable with yourself, to truly know what you desire, and
Absolutely.
what are you beyond all these definitions and all these limitations that you have adopted from your family. So what if anybody who's watching us, and we do have a question, I'll get to your question, Himanshi, in a minute. So if anybody who's watching us, like, what are the steps we could take towards actually being vulnerable with ourselves and not limit us from, talking to, and like, not even talking, like engaging even with people, like, in India we have a lot of people with the whole Hindu and Muslim thing going on, and Christians are absolute outcasts. And like, and there's so many religion who are minority, and like, oh, not that, oh, you're always belittling a particular religion, which is not very honoring of anybody, if you ask me.
No,
So
agreed.
yeah, so how, or I know how is not a question, like, what question or what space can we function from to truly have that kind of vulnerability?
Uh, well, it's actually being that space of vulnerability that allows you to be present with it. Maybe can you ask me a
Yeah.
bit different the question?
Yeah, so I think I just answered my question. Like, just asking what space of vulnerability
Yeah,
can I be,
exactly.
uh would probably invite even people to have their barriers down, because very
Exactly.
often these definitions are barriers to, um yeah. So you do a class in manipulation, Kalpana, and I mean, it's so interesting to see how even you as a, you as a businesswoman, you interact with so many cultures, and you interact with so many people. You interact with so many people talking in different languages, even though you may not be speaking those languages. And that's actually being vulnerable and being out there and being that energy of oneness, and not saying, hey, what, you're not somebody I can speak to because I don't know the language, but you actually
Yeah.
invite them. So what space, like, what created that? Where did you start from? How did you begin?
I mean, I don't know if there's really a beginning, but there's always. I was raised with three languages. I spoke Tamil at home and then English and then Dutch. So there's always been this kind of openness to different, and then being raised Indian household, but the context is Dutch. So this intercultural element was always part of my life. And then the last 3 years of high school, I went to an international school. So I was and then I studied cultural anthropology. So I've just always been very intrigued by people, and I have a master's in anthropology because I was just really curious about what does make people, what does why do people do what they do, and what makes them tick, and why is it so different
Yeah,
one part of the world than the other part. So that curiosity has always been there. I think I think somewhere this kind of like I don't really in a way care if I fail might not always be true with everything, but a lot of it is about like what you said, this vulnerability of like I'm just gonna go for it. I was on stage when I was 5, I think, so there's this willingness to be out there and create and follow that spark, and so
yeah.
also make choices that are maybe not logical, but the willingness to follow the energy. I think that has helped me to meet different kind of people, interact with different kind of people, and um, engage in different situations, which allows me to travel, like you were saying, all over the world. I remember 2 years ago, I think I went to Algeria for entities class, and I was like, "What the hell am I doing here?" Like you find yourself in, but it's also like, yeah, I'm following the energy, and I'm willing to trust that. So it's a
Yeah.
vulnerability, trusting yourself, and curiosity. mix, I would say. That is part of who
Yeah.
I've always been. That in the
Yeah.
human reality is often judged as like, oh, you're so whimsical, you're all over the place,
Yeah.
you're so spontaneous, which is what I got thrown at me a lot. And I, with Access, allowed that to turn your wrongness into your strongness, and been, but it's
Yeah.
always been there.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing because that curiosity of yours about, okay, why do people do what they do in, different in different parts of the world, and why do they choose certain things, and what actually gets them to choose is a great space to function from, because then you're not resisting anybody and anything. You're
Well
you
said.
can
Yeah,
receive
true.
you
Yeah,
can receive, whatever they are, whoever they are, and you can be like, okay, cool, that's who they be, so cool.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
totally, totally.
We have a
Yes.
couple of questions. I'm just going to go to the questions. And guys, if you have any more questions, feel free to put it in the comments and we'll take that up. So Himanshi says, can you talk about the question asked by Gary? What if we are here for the planet and not for the people? Hmm, that's a
I think
lovely
she
question.
might be referring to a post I made, which started with that. I was watching the Chasing Coral documentary on Netflix, and when I
Okay.
saw that, and there's a bunch of beautiful documentaries out now around the Earth and about the Earth,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Gary Douglas had asked this question in the 7 Day in Costa Rica, and I remember going, "What? Wow!" And it just did something, but I couldn't really get it. And when I saw, like, when I'm seeing what's occurring now with the virus and the pandemic and the way we're being with nature and how disconnected we have become and how human reality is so much about destroying, this
Yeah.
this communion, I was like, oh my God. And how idiotic people can be. And
Yeah.
this, like,
Yeah.
oh, am I actually even here for people? I mean, how many of us actually love being alone? How many of us are like, oh my God, it's okay, the
Yeah.
people, but the earth, that's something different. So that's kind
Yeah.
of what I got out of that question that he gave us. This willingness to not judge yourself if you're not totally into people, and the willingness to be present with the earth. And if you function from, hey, if I'm here for the earth, what would I choose? The earth doesn't need me,
Yeah.
but I might need the earth more. And what communion can we function from? And if it's not the need of this reality, but more of this co-creation.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is not the need of this reality. Like, even if we look at the earth and how it does not distinguish between even different people, it's a beautiful space, right? Just because there's an African standing on the earth, or an Indian, or a European, I mean, it does not say, okay, I'm going
Exactly.
to give the African more sun and no sun to the Indian, or, the space
Exactly.
that it actually functions from, and the vulnerability and the gratitude it has for you. I don't think we have one, I don't know, millionth of it for the earth.
Exactly.
And it's such a beautiful space if we are willing to be with the earth and be one with it and truly contributing to it by just being the joyous self that we are. I don't think anything else is actually required.
Totally. Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very well said.
We
Yeah.
have we have another question. Amy says, so marriages are supposed to last, hopefully, a lifetime, and hence there is a pressure to make the right choice. How can one get over that?
Well, that's my response.
Love your question. So I have to say this. So I was on another live with somebody, and they're like, marriages in India have to last. It's a lifetime thing. Okay, it cannot not ever end because you have to do till death does us apart, and that's the only way we can do marriage. And I love the question because I'm in that space exactly. Like, how can I get it right? Who's the right person for me?
Yeah.
Who can I choose that will not fuck me over? Or who can I choose that will not, like sort of destroy me or not limit me or not diminish me? And, we sort of use access against us a lot of times when we're
Well,
doing
you're
that.
actually not really asking a question.
Yeah.
You're not you're actually having a conclusion that somebody's going to fuck me over. Who is it not that's going to fuck me over, or maybe less? So it's also
Yeah.
where we think we're asking a question, but we're functioning from a very conclusionary reality. And like you
Yeah.
said, there's this thing of like, which the question is about, like doing it right. And if I don't have the right person, I better not do it right, which makes
Yeah.
you like, oh. But if you wouldn't have to do it right or wrong, and if you simply look at what that engagement with this other person can create. And the thing with
Yeah.
marriage, I mean, I didn't want to get married, neither did my husband, but both of us come from families and cultures that are very family connected. And we were like, our combination is so rare. A marriage kind of just was light. It was like, it's going to create more for everybody. I know it relaxed my family because they're like, "Ayo, with an African, what are you doing?" First, and then they met him and they loved him immediately. But it
Yeah.
created the space, and it was not from, oh, yeah, I can't say it otherwise than therefore anything. If we take out all the therefores that marriage must mean and say, what can
Yeah.
you then look at purely from creationship, like from the creation of relationship?
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah.
be willing to fuck up, and it's okay, because that not willing to fuck up keeps you from choice and presence.
Yeah, that's so true. And thank you for saying what you said in the beginning of that conversation, Kalpana, that I'm not really asking a question. And how many of us who actually are leading, in the space of marriage, not really asking a question because you're expecting to be destroyed by somebody else.
Yeah, yeah,
You're expecting to
exactly.
be abused. You're
You're waiting.
expecting.
You're waiting for it. You're basically like preparing.
Yeah, I mean, oh my God, that is so insane, isn't it? Like,
Yeah,
you're literally waiting when somebody can diminish you or limit you, and then you can react and you can fight back and you can be, that rebellious humanoid. What if none of that was relevant?
yeah, exactly. What if, and everything is possible, but it's really like being this question that informs you, that awareness that it gives you, and follow that lead.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, that's amazing. Wow. Guys, if you have another question, please put it in here. And is there anything you'd like to talk to the audience who's watching us right now? Is there any tip you'd like to give them for anybody who's looking at creating a creationship and not a relationship? Uh, and we do
I
have a
love.
class, right, coming up?
I have a manipulation 101 class coming up end of November, which is a specialty class that Gary and Dane actually gave me because they kind of caught me They were like, "You're manipulating us." Wait a minute. And Gary had talked to me about it before. I was like, "When are you going to acknowledge your capacities?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And then I kind of got over it. So that's a class that actually is a class that changes so much with relationship. If you're not willing to, not manipulation from this reality where you're basically fooling people and abusing them, but access manipulation, which is where you're willing to be present and the energy that is required. And that is like such a key with relationship, any kind of relationship, with your boyfriend, with your mom, with your boss, with your sister-in-law, with your friend. Like that energy of willing to be what is required and really functioning as an infinite being changes everything. And we have a lot of points of views about who we are. And oh no, I am like this, so I cannot be this energy. And that literally keeps you from having ease when you're relating with people. So that is a class that I would highly recommend if you're interested in having more ease and remaining yourself without like giving up who you are and still being not basically going crazy, not getting triggered,
Yeah,
not getting tongue
yeah,
tied. Yeah,
yeah.
definitely. Yeah,
That's amazing. And I love the energy of manipulation because that's an energy that I have resisted for all my life. Because, that whole thing, I'm not that, I'm a very straightforward person kind of a
exactly.
definition that we stick to. And and when we are willing to access that energy is when we are willing to be all of us because
Yeah,
we are all that energy and we can have,
exactly.
we can work things around in a way that actually works for us rather than actually being in situations that don't work for us anymore.
Exactly. Exactly.
And
Yeah,
Kalpana, I have to say, you being with your husband and you creating that kind of an intercultural marriage and going beyond all the definitions and all these whatever we have, the boxes that we have created is really a huge possibility for me for sure. Coming from I relate a lot to you as a person, and so it's a brilliant invitation for people who are very stuck in their definitions and, so committed to diminishing themselves. And thank you so much for showing up, and thank you so much for being the fierce, uh, feisty person that you are. And thank you for being here. I absolutely enjoyed this conversation. And so, anybody who'd like to get onto the manipulation class, I think Kalpana can send me a link and I'll put it into
Yes,
the comment and you can reach out to her directly. And it was
absolutely.
lovely talking to you, Kalpana. Thank you so much for all the contribution.
Thank you for this conversation, and I love the episode. I love the title. Is now the time to receive beyond caste, culture, religion, and ethnicity. I think that's such a different way of looking at receiving as well, like catching
Yeah.
ourselves where we're not.
Yeah.
So thank you for creating this possibility for people. Thank you, Reshma. And thank you, everybody watching now or later.
Yes. Thank you
Yes.
guys, and I'll see you next Tuesday with another beautiful guest. Bye bye.
Bye.